Braves and baseball fans, it's time to take a trip from coast to coast across Major League Baseball.
There it goes, a long drive. If it stays fair, home run.
One strike away. Sandy into his windup. Here's the pitch. Swung on and missed a perfect game.
Fly ball deep left center. Grissom on the run. Yes! 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 The Atlanta Braves have given you a championship. Listen to this crowd.
Left side, Swanson to first. Braves, world champions.
Braves and baseball talk, straight from the diamond. Here's Grant McCauley.
Hello and welcome into From the Diamond with Grant McCauley right here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. We are live from the Kia Studios as we wrap out, dare I say it, a winning weekend for the Atlanta Braves. How about a sweep of the Minnesota Twins? And sometimes I guess the old adage is true. Maybe you just have to play a team that's worse than you to feel better about yourself. I don't know if that's actually an adage. I just kind of came up with that on the spot. But that's certainly part of the narrative here for the Atlanta Braves. Sometimes you just need to get wins no matter who the opponent is, and that certainly is true. These are some factual statements we can start with as we unpack what was, I dare say, a much better weekend of Braves baseball and clearly the best series that they have played all season long as far as results are concerned. As far as the win column is concerned, which is a place that the Braves very much need to visit as many times as possible to close out the month of April and make up for what was an absolutely abysmal start to the season. If you're listening out there, I'm sure you know it's not the kind of start that you were looking for from the Atlanta Braves, nor was it the start they were looking for from themselves. And as I've talked about quite a bit right here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game, as I've written about in the Marietta Daily Journal, as I have tweeted about on social media, and my goodness, did we do some, are we still calling it tweeting? We'll call it posting anyway. My goodness, did we do a lot of that from Saturday night into Sunday about another topic we're going to get into a little bit later as relates to hustle. But I'm going to table that discussion for now, put it off to the side, and just tell you this. The answers have been harder and harder to find for the Braves this season than perhaps any other time that we can think of for this club. And just when you start to, I don't know if it's dissect it, if it's to, it's really interesting. The word I'm not exactly sure exists to discuss exactly what the Braves were attempting to do. Were they looking to just forget about it and move on? Were they really looking to examine it? Were they dissecting it? Were they parsing through the information to see if perhaps they weren't as bad as the results were telling them they are, which I would make an argument there's a little bit of that mixed in there as well. Are they just flat out looking for some good luck? I think that goes a long way when you start talking about the formula for winning. Sometimes, and I know this is a saying because I've heard it before and I've heard baseball players use it before, it's better to be lucky than good. And that could also be a story for the 2025 Atlanta Braves. But big sweeping narratives aside, I mean, this was a series the Braves very much needed against the Minnesota Twins. They closed out a victory on Sunday behind Grant Holmes, and more stellar work from the bullpen, which we will talk about in this show as being one of the keys to victory for the Braves this weekend. And we saw, I think, a different level from the Braves offense in a couple of different ways. Number one, consistency, and number two, the clutch that they have not been showing somehow showed up. The ability to manufacture runs without home runs and have a big inning showed up. That was overdue. That was something we hadn't seen very much of, and that's something that the Atlanta Braves have just needed at some point, to some degree this season. Just a base hit would do. Maybe one extra base hit a night. And I don't mean extra base hits as in double, triple homer. I mean just one more base hit in the right spot. We could be talking about a very different season. It's just felt like they've been at times an eyelash away, and then at other times it has felt like this club is rudderless. It is lost. It is listless. It is just searching for some kind of direction. It's just out there, just rolling around in the open sea, waiting for the wind to pick up to take them somewhere. But I think that we've seen, at least over the weekend and at times over the last 2 weeks, the bones of a club that could be very much better than it is. And I would argue, I don't even have to argue, I'm going to make the statement that the Braves are better than their record would indicate, but they are who they are based on those results, as Brian Snitker said this week, until we're not. And that just comes with winning. It comes with consistency. It comes with more competitive at-bats. And it simply comes with playing the brand of baseball that they believe that they're capable of playing. So I say all of that to say that sweeping the Minnesota Twins was kind of a feel-good for a Braves season that hasn't felt very good thus far. When you start out 0-7, it's going to be difficult to look at it any other way until you've played enough games to put that further and further and further in the rearview mirror. And I would tell you that the Braves are starting to move in that direction, because what has happened since they started the season 0-7? They've gone 8-6 since then. Now, I'm saying this full well, 72, let's make it 96 hours, after the Braves came home from a road trip in which they had a chance to win 2 series there and somehow lost both of them. So what were we to make of that? Had the club really figured anything out, or were they still kind of lost? And then again, the right opponent at the right time, and the Twins are certainly that. And the Twins are not an altogether untalented team, but they quite simply are having a tough start to their season as well. And sometimes you just got to make hay against what the schedule's given you. And the Braves very much needed to do that, because I would also say that if you'd somehow stumbled and fallen against a club that's likewise 6-7 games under 500 coming in, you have nobody to blame but yourself at some point. And I don't think the Braves are really looking for somebody else to blame either. Maybe that's just a whole nother story. But in the midst of this road trip in which they had a chance to do more winning, as I talked about, the Braves got Spencer Strider back. And that's a boost, for sure. That's a missing piece that they certainly needed. And we're going to hear from Spencer Strider a little bit later on. Got a chance to chat with him as the homestand began against the Minnesota Twins. That was before the 3 victories that happened Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And obviously before his second start of the season, which is upcoming on Tuesday against the St. Louis Cardinals, who are the next team in on this 6-game homestand for the Braves. But having Spencer Strider back, I think that is one of those things that even though they didn't win his return start, and trust me, I understand how frustrating that becomes and how many different frustrating ways that the Braves have lost games this year, you were thinking maybe emotionally you're going to get that swing. But as much as we would like emotional outbursts to be able to stem the tide and perhaps electrify and create a new and different direction, it doesn't always work that way. But momentum is a real thing, and the Braves finally have some of that. And Spencer Strider being back in this rotation, that was something that Atlanta had been looking forward to. Now, you would love to have him rejoining one that includes Reynaldo Lopez, who we're not going to be seeing for several months, obviously. You'd love to have Spencer Strider back in there with Chris Sale clicking on all cylinders, and that's certainly not happening. And nobody will tell you more about that than Chris Sale did. Man, his comments after his start on Saturday, tremendous in terms of accountability. The results, though, not so tremendous, so you kind of wish that you never knew those quotes existed. But if you're looking for somebody in that clubhouse that certainly has a firm grasp on himself and, the outcome of his contribution to the team, Chris Sale's at or near the top of the list. There's a few of those guys, but Chris Sale certainly will tell you. He'll tell you if it's good. He'll tell you if it's bad. And I think the interesting thing about Chris Sale, who I think is on a Hall of Fame trajectory for his career, I know injuries have kind of derailed that, but if you look at it, and maybe this is another topic for another show, he's been one of the best pitchers in baseball for a long time. Let's put it that way. So for somebody like that to basically come in and say, well, if it's going well, it's supposed to. That's what I am. That's what we do. That's what we want. That's what we set out for. And if it's going bad, to tell you that as well. And why. And to take accountability for it. I think there's just something to be said for that, and Chris Sale is one of those guys. But when you start as poorly as Atlanta did, and your entire sample size is nothing but poor numbers, it's easy to question things, but I will say it's a long season for a reason, but the time to play better is now, and the Braves have clearly gotten that memo. So what's left in April, I think, is a decent chance to make a push at least towards 500, and that sounds like a foreign thought. Even 4 days ago when the Braves came home from that road trip, having just lost 4 out of 6, lost a series to the Blue Jays, lost a series to the Rays, even though inside of those series in that road trip, there were little signs that, hey, maybe the Braves can score runs. Hey, maybe the Braves can get some clutch hits. Maybe they can get the pitching that they need. But putting all of that together has just been a little bit more difficult this year than really any year I can think of amidst the Braves being in this, I'll say, era or window of being perennial contenders. I saw plenty of this stuff in the rebuild. And I can promise you, most Braves fans, even though you get really frustrated with the first couple, 3 weeks, and you might want to see this guy or that guy get traded and this guy or that guy get fired, I can promise you don't want to just jump back into a rebuild that you just never know how you're going to come out of those and how long it takes to come out of one of those. So I guess what I'm saying is try to enjoy it as much as you can. Try to commit your mind to the idea that baseball season is very long, and sometimes the first impression is not necessarily indicative of how a club is going to play the entire year. And there's plenty of stories of those littered in baseball's past. I don't even have to invoke the spirit of the 2021 Braves and where they were in the month of August before figuring out how to win the World Series. But I'll throw it all in there anyway. It's all part of the mosaic. But right now it kind of feels like, you remember going to the mall? I mean, malls are still a thing, I think, for most people. But back in the 80s, early 90s, they had these things called a magic eye. It was artwork. It was very in vogue at the time. And when you looked at it, it looked like a bunch of nothing. It looked like a colorized snowstorm. But if you stared at it long enough, you saw a sailboat. Or you saw whatever it was you were supposed to see. I never saw it, so I don't know what that says about me or how I, cycle through information in my brain. But if you Google these things, if they're still around, you can see them. And I don't know if you'll see the image that's supposed to be inside, the image of nothing, but that's kind of what it feels like sometimes when you got so much stuff going on, you're just not even sure what you're looking for anymore. And I think that kind of is indicative of how a lot of people may have been feeling about this. You're supposed to see it, but man, I don't see it. And that's kind of what it was over the first at least 14 or so games for this club, maybe 17 games. But the last 3, maybe that makes you feel differently altogether in the last couple of weeks. Being a club that has at least been consistently over 500 for 14 games, again, that's a small sample size too, but so is 7, and 14's twice what 7 is, so I don't know. You can make the numbers say what you want them to say. But ultimately, playing a better brand of baseball is going to make a whole lot of people feel a whole lot better about what the Braves are doing this year and the possibilities this year. Putting Spencer Strider back in that mix is a huge piece. Getting Ronald Acuna Jr. back into this thing is going to be a big deal. And then there are the smaller moves that you make that sometimes, maybe they're the catalyst for something better. Figuring out the leadoff spot was something the Braves very much needed to do because it wasn't working. After Jurickson Profar got suspended, that in and of itself short-circuited what you hoped to be getting out of that spot. Michael Harris had a lot of struggles in the leadoff spot, and there was really nobody else you looked at and thought, okay, this is the guy. The guy is going to go on a rehab assignment in about a week or so, I believe. And we'll talk about Ronald Acuna Jr. a little bit more later, but he's closing in on that thing. But there was really nobody to step into that role. Then you bring up Alex Verdugo, a veteran. I'm not going to call him a journeyman, but a veteran, proven quality player, still 28 years old, that you picked up on a minor league deal at the end of spring training, and all of a sudden he's right in the middle of a very good, very big series for the Braves. And maybe, and Brian Stitker said this a couple of days ago, maybe we'll look back on this series and Verdugo jumping in and leading off for us, and that's the thing that got us going, got us turning things around. And maybe this will be. But you got to capitalize on this momentum. You got to win another series against the Cardinals. Then you got to go out on the road and play a really tough team, the Arizona Diamondbacks. Then you have the Colorado Rockies, a club that's been off to a worse start than just about any other team this side of the Chicago White Sox. They, in the National League, have been put through it this year. The Rockies have already fired their hitting coach 3 weeks into the season. And if you were the hitting coach and half of your games are in Coors Field and you're getting fired, man, I don't know what that says about your methods, but probably nothing good. But yeah, that's who the Braves close out the month with. You can't take any of this stuff for granted, but that's what's ahead of them. And I think the opportunity to possibly, perhaps, if they can play a good brand of baseball and win some series here, to find themselves up over that 500 mark, or at least to the 500 mark, or just damn close to it by the time that this month wraps up. Coming up on the show, we're going to dive into this week in Braves baseball. You're going to hear from several Braves, including Spencer Strider, Alex Verdugo, and shortstop Nick Allen, who I had a chance to catch up with. We'll also take a trip down to the farm to hear about the newest Braves minor league affiliate, the AA Columbus Clingstones. Radio voice Jack Johnson will join me for that. So lots coming up on this edition of From the Diamond. Stick with me. Up next this week in Braves baseball as we continue on From the Diamond with Grant McCauley on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Here we go now.
I love baseball. Now back to more Grant McCauley and From the Diamond on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Welcome back into From the Diamond with Grant McCauley on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game as we wrap up a weekend for the Atlanta Braves, who with their 6-2 victory on Sunday, follow me with this, not only did they complete their series with the Minnesota Twins, which they won, but they completed it with a sweep, their first sweep of the year. And as I have been known to talk about when it comes to winning streaks, there's a certain way that you have to do the math. I learned it from Lou Brown in Major League. You win a baseball game one day, that's great. You win another one the second day, that's 2 in a row. You win the third one, that's a winning streak. It has happened before, and it has finally happened this season. The Braves know a thing or two about those. They also, unfortunately, were reminded what a losing streak is like with one of their worst in years to start the season, but now it does appear there is some light at the end of this tunnel. They are digging their way out, and their 6-2 victory over the Twins behind Grant Holmes with some more clutch hitting and some more good work by the offense, and, hey, more good work by the bullpen, which I definitely want to talk about as the show goes on. Those were the keys to victory. It was just that simple. Now, Holmes dominated, I felt like. I mean, even his line in his start against against the Toronto Blue Jays was not indicative of how well he pitched because he left and there were runners on base. But by and large, this is a guy that's, I think, finding a way to post for you every fifth day. And I know a lot of people have pointed and said, hey, maybe he'll go back to the bullpen. And maybe he will. I don't know. But right now, I don't think you can make a case that there are at least two more starting pitchers on the Braves staff that deserve the innings and are more capable of those innings than Grant Holmes is. And that is the end of my rant about that. Now, I really think that he has earned this opportunity, and it's exciting to see somebody with his story and his arm and what he's done earn that opportunity and take it, make the most of it, and help his club win. And that's what Grant Holmes did on Sunday against the Minnesota Twins. Again, 6-2 was the final as the Braves completed their sweep of that series in 3 games. Now, a week ago, if you flash back to this, and here's a great way to flash back. You can subscribe to From the Diamond wherever you get your podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app. And right there, if you go to last week's episode, which said something about the Braves still searching for answers after their tough start, because it's been tough to call any episode of my show anything else other than that, because that's basically been the story for 3 straight weeks. But we were talking about the offense and the difficulties that they were having, especially with runners in scoring position. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, well, I'm standing, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the Braves have figured all of that out and they'll never, struggle again with runners on base. They might. They might not be out of the woods yet, but they certainly showed some signs of at least picking up the trail again and finding a way to really manufacture some runs. And I think we saw some really great stuff in the opener of the series when down heading into the late innings. Not only did the Braves find a way to score some runs, but they did it really, by and large, without having to rely on a 2-run homer or a couple of home runs to do it. I mean, Jared Kelenic got him back into it, and that's great. But the inning in which the Braves were able to put together against Griffin Jacks, who's, I think, one of the more talented relievers, obviously, on the Twins, and maybe one of the better ones in baseball last year, and the relentless way that the Braves went at it in that inning with key walks, with big hits, with a big pinch hit by Drake Baldwin, a huge hit by Michael Harris II, who, hey, by the way, has been, I think, if there's a lightning rod for the Braves' struggles with runners in scoring position, Harris might be one of those guys that you look at the most and think, man, he's got to get it going. And he does. And he's aware of that. But that big hit in that inning really helped to stem the tide, turn things for the Braves, and Drake Baldwin coming off the bench. And we'll talk about Drake Baldwin here in a minute, a little bit more, but I just got to go ahead and say it because I just feel like it's become one of the more pleasant stories in a season which hasn't had as many pleasant stories as you'd like. But this kid, I think his acumen at the plate and his approach he is wise beyond his years. It is a very refreshing approach that he has. He hits to all fields, and he goes up there, and he just flat out has a plan for what he's going to do. And he did it off the bench on Friday night with a 2-run single to help the Braves win that game against Minnesota, get that series started off right. They win again on Saturday by a 4-3 score, and then turn around on Sunday and complete that sweep. But you had to see the offense start to do its part because I know you can look at the pitching staff and you can be upset when, hey, the starter's not getting deep enough into the game. Hey, the starters are flat out not performing well enough. Maybe we're down a starter, which, of course, the Braves are. Should you have gone out in the winter and got a starter? All of these are realistic conversations that we can still be having. If you want to have them, I'm here for it. You can say the same things about the bullpen, which is down a couple of big arms, one via free agency and H.A. Minter, the other in Joe Jimenez, who got hurt, and really nobody came in to replace those guys. So you can look at a couple games the bullpen lost you and say, okay, well, these guys have got to be better. But I will stand up on top of the mountaintop and tell you, if you don't score, you're not giving these guys much margin for error, and you can't expect perfection out of this. So I think the pitching staff can put this thing together, but the offense, starting to show the signs they did over the weekend, is particularly encouraging. Their sluggers have picked it up. If you look at this over the past 2 weeks as well, Atlanta is second in the National League in home runs, behind only the Arizona Diamondbacks, who were, I think, one of the best, if not the best, offensive teams in baseball a year ago, and are doing many of the same things again this year. So it's good to see that the Braves are hitting homers, but better to see that they did the kinds of things that they did in their late rally on Friday night without having to rely on somebody coming up and hitting a big 3-run homer. Just a relentless, keep the line moving approach, if you'll allow. In the middle of all that, I think, has been the hot hitting of Austin Riley, who came into Sunday hitting a robust .354, 4 homers, 9 runs knocked in, 8 runs scored his past 11 games. After his very cold start, he's turned things around, knocked in another run, was in the midst of it on Sunday for what the Braves were doing against the Minnesota Twins. Riley was present and accounted for there. to grab that early lead and pick up that 6-2 win. But Austin Riley has gotten it going. Marcell Ozuna has been in the middle of plenty of good things for the Braves the past few years now. But he had an injury concern on the road trip that obviously we haven't spoken here in 7 days, but man, that would have been a pretty scary reality. Now, I remember talking about it on last week's show, hey, if you miss Marcell Ozuna for any great length of time, I don't want to imagine what the Braves offense is going to have to do to figure things out without him. He stayed back in Atlanta while the club was in Toronto, got an MRI on his hip that showed inflammation, and it's a manageable situation, something he's been dealing with for a while, as you may know. Marcell Ozuna, not the fleetest of foot, but he can see the ball, he can hit the ball, and he can hit it a long way, and he can certainly take his walks. He's shown this year as well, so that's a very important cog, maybe the cog in the Braves offense. As Reggie Jackson once said, the straw that stirs the drink. That's what Marcell Ozuna has been. I don't think there's been much question about that. So it seems to be a minor injury concern, but as Brian Snitker talked about, we didn't want to let it become something bigger because we just dismissed it at first, and he tried to play through it. So they wanted to get their answers. Now that they have one, they feel pretty comfortable about Marcell being back in there, and he was obviously in the midst of the Braves 3-game sweep against the Minnesota Twins, doing some pretty good things. The other good news, or well, more good news on the offense for the Braves is what's happening for Matt Olson here lately. You look at what he was doing over the first couple of weeks of the season. He was hitting the ball hard, and he wasn't having much to show for it. And when we discussed this a week ago, it was, all right, well, if I look at the StatCast data, which some people are into, some people are not, same thing with the expected stats. Well, he should be hitting a lot better than he is, but he's not. And until he is, don't tell me about it. Well, I'm here on the show to tell you about these things. Now, all of a sudden, Matt Olson has adjusted that one little StatCast metric that I talked about a week ago that was really, really off. A week ago, his launch angle, sweet spot, was completely off kilter and in the bottom 7% of Major League Baseball, which meant even though he was hitting the ball hard, he was topping it quite a lot. He was hitting a lot of ground balls, which, as Matt Olson said, I want to say either in 2022 or maybe in 23. It might have been right before he even played his first game with the Braves. But long story short, if I hit the ball on the ground, that's a miss for me. That's a loss. Like, I'm not trying to do that. I'll never try to do that, basically. And I don't blame him because he's a guy who can be one of the premier power hitters in the game. He's trying to lift and separate, hit the ball hard, hit the ball really far, and do some damage. But with the ball going on the ground so much, even the hard hit stuff was not getting him much. But he's made that little adjustment. I think we saw it throughout the course of the weekend against Minnesota. So he has vastly improved over the last 6 days. He's batting .458 over the past week, and that's before hitting that big home run on Sunday to get the Braves offense going, slugging well over .500. That's the Matt Olson they need. That's exactly what the Braves need out of him. Now you start to stack that with Marcell Ozuna, and you stack that with Austin Riley. And maybe you start to get some things from Ozzie Albies and from Michael Harris and Alex Verdugo, who has stepped in, and he had a 4-hit game on Saturday. That was no small thing. You get him going. Sean Murphy and Drake Baldwin behind the plate. Can they provide what you need there and also at the plate? All of a sudden, you got to be feeling a little bit better about what the Braves offense can be, playing better than just the sum of its parts, which has been, I think, a way to describe the Braves over the past couple of years. Like, everything should add up to more than it does, but for some reason, it's not. And Spencer Strider, who you'll hear from in a little while, he said, look, it's not like we don't have talent here. We just got to figure out how to get ourselves to that next level, to make ourselves that much better, to give ourselves the opportunity to make the most of each and every day, start turning those things into wins. That's how you turn this around. And that's what the Braves are very much trying to do. And how about Drake Baldwin, by the way? Even with less playing time since Sean Murphy returned, I think I like even more what I'm seeing, if that was possible. The quality of the at-bats. There's just so much to like there, as I touched on earlier. It's a good professional at-bat, and this is a kid that looks like he has a plan. And now he is getting some results for that hard hit rate, which was one of the things he looked at when the ball wasn't falling and thought, okay, well, is my approach garnering the kind of outcome that I need to if I'm going well? Because you can't do anything about exactly where the ball goes. There might be a man standing there. But if you continue to have that consistency in your work, eventually things will start to work out for you. But a 71% hard hit rate. Now, he doesn't qualify, but if he did, he'd be in the, I believe, 92nd percentile in hard hit rate. That's pretty good. Also, 21.5% whiff rate. He'd be down toward the bottom quarter, bottom third. So not only does he swing and hit the ball hard, but he doesn't swing and miss altogether that often. So that's how you can have the kind of results that he's been having. I think they're just both indicators of success. Baldwin homered again on Sunday, the second of his short career. He's now got a 7-game hitting streak working. And these are all good things. And these are all things that the Braves will need. I know Sean Murphy came out like a house of fire, hitting a bunch of home runs when he got back, and the Braves definitely needed Sean Murphy back. But the decision to keep Drake Baldwin up rather than send him down to the minors, I think a lot of people kind of wondered, okay, well, why? They cut Chadwick Trump, who was a well-liked and very capable backup catcher. Not a guy you were going to cede a whole bunch of time to. But I think that this decision was made for a multitude of reasons, not the least of which was Baldwin's one of the best hitters on the team. He may not be able to get all the at-bats all the time at catcher, because really no catcher does. But I think you'd have some splaining to do when it came to why you don't want that guy to be getting at-bats for your club right now when at-bats, quality at-bats, were fewer and further between than you wanted. And the Braves were also trying to fix the leadoff spot. Alex Verdugo jumped up there this week after the struggles from Michael Harris II, which we talked about quite a bit. We're going to hear from Verdugo in just a little while here, but that opportunity was not lost on him because think about his offseason. He went from playing in the World Series, being an everyday player on the Yankees, and I know it was a down year for him, worst year of his career. But it ended in the World Series, where a club was giving him playing time. And when he went into the winter, he just flat out could not find a deal. Nothing was really working for him. And then at the very end of spring training, he was able to connect with the Braves, with Alex Anthopoulos, and I think it's kind of a fortuitous thing that he did because there was no clear path to playing time at that time. Because you had Jurickson Profar, you have Michael Harris, and then you've got whatever's going to go on in right field. So maybe you mix into that, maybe you don't. I don't know. But Verdugo, as the case may be, managed to find his way into the plan within 3 weeks of the season. And I think he's going to be one of those guys that you're just going to look at, and he's going to be worth more than just the numbers that are on the field. Because the personality might be just the kind of thing that the Braves needed a little bit of an injection of to get themselves going, a little extra, a little spark, that kind of stuff. We're going to hear a little bit from Alex Verdugo here in a moment. We've got a lot more to come here as This Week in Braves Baseball continues. We caught up with Verdugo, Spencer Strider, and I had a chat with Nick Allen, who has carved himself out some nice playing time with the Braves at shortstop. He's been one of the great stories of the early going of the season. We'll hear all of that and much more as From the Diamond with Grant McCauley continues right here on Sports Radio 92.9 Game.
Back to Grant McCauley for more From the Diamond on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Welcome back into From the Diamond with Grant McCauley on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game, live from the Kia Studios here on a Sunday as we wrap up the weekend for the Braves, who closed out their series with the Minnesota Twins, and now they get ready to welcome the St. Louis Cardinals to town. We'll dissect that series, what's upcoming for the Braves, and, of course, talk a little bit more about what we saw this weekend, many of those things being quite the positive and in stark contrast to what we saw over the first week or two for this Braves team, but perhaps, as the old saying goes, a harbinger of things to come, if in fact a harbinger can be a good thing, but I digress. The Braves certainly saw some things they needed to see this weekend, let's put it that way. The offense had some big innings. They were able to manufacture some runs without the virtue of a home run, but on the flip side of that coin, the Braves have started hitting home runs again, and perhaps hitting those in bunches, which has been a hallmark of this club, and quite frankly, one of the things that's typically going right when this club is playing at its maximum level. That aside, the Braves have had some questions on the pitching front that they very much needed answers to. Some of those having to do with guys stepping up in different roles and performing. Others have to do with injuries and returns. And of course, there's no bigger return for this pitching staff than that of Spencer Strider, which we saw on Wednesday in Toronto. He limited the Blue Jays to 2 runs across 5 innings, did surrender a home run, and struck out 5. And I think it's still going to be a bit of a work in progress as he continues to build up and hopefully get back to that level of which we're used to seeing Spencer Strider perform at. We had the chance to catch up with Braves right-hander Spencer Strider, who was facing big league hitters for the first time in just over a year when he competed against the Toronto Blue Jays to close out the road trip. While he did not get the win, the effort was there, the innings that he was able to cover, and of course, what he's able to take away from that, all things that Spencer Strider was trying to take an inventory of as he sized up his next start, which will come against the Cardinals.
I need the reps. I need reps at max effort. I don't have a lot of 90-plus pitch outings under my belt at this point. That was my second one. So, continuing to build stamina and just understanding that it's a process. And, just like I just got finished saying, the goal is not to be perfect ever, but certainly not right now. I want to get better every day and learn along the way. And, you've got to be patient, but have ambition towards finding those things to get better at. And, continue to evaluate yourself honestly. And so, that's what I'm going to do with this start and every start I have.
It was a long road to get back on a big league mound for Spencer Strider, but now the real test begins, and that's being ready to start every fifth day and to keep that ball rolling. Strider discussed what his mindset is when it comes to the hard work and dedication it will take to find success again.
Regardless of the outcome, I think, to face big league hitters for a whole game, I mean, that's useful information, useful feedback for me, and to see how my body handles that and how my mechanics carried through the outing and how I feel yesterday and today, and structuring my bullpens in the midweek, and not that I'm not familiar with that process, obviously, but I'm not married to the past. I'm trying to find the best version of myself and what's going to help the team win. So in that way, I mean, it's an outing, and just like any other one, you got to learn from it and be better next time.
In the bigger picture, Strider walks into a team that is very much trying to figure it out after a tough start over the season's first 3 weeks, but is showing some signs here lately. I asked him what exactly a good homestand could mean for this club, and here's what the Braves righty had to say.
Obviously, it's trying to get better. That's not specific to the way things have started this year. I think that should be the goal and is the goal on a team and individual basis every year. We know we need to be playing our best baseball at the end of the season, and that takes deliberate effort every day to achieve that. So, of course, the start has not been what we would like from an outcome standpoint, but there's a silver lining there, and that's that there's plenty to learn from. Every team is going to experience slumps. Every team is going to experience injuries, adversity. Those things can make you stronger, smarter, better, tougher, and that's good. So I think if you approach struggle and bad outcomes that way, then it's an opportunity to get better, and we need those opportunities. So.
Finding ways to get better is the hallmark of Spencer Strider. It's something that he has certainly discussed a lot over the course of his short big league career, but it's something that in these times, when you face adversity, might just help you find the mindset to overcome whatever is thrown at you.
I mean, we have talent. That's certainly the case, and it's baseball. So you're going to be presented with failure, and the margins that lead to success and outcomes on the field over the long run are very small. And we've got to be willing to, myself more so than anybody, to identify those things and have the humility to confront them head on and try to get better. Like I said, not being married to the past, understanding that what worked before may not work tomorrow, may not work today. And so continuing to pursue that best version of ourselves. Like I said, struggles and failure, especially now, are a great opportunity to get better. And we should relish those opportunities when they come. And I think that the guys in here know how to do that work.
Spencer Strider was undoubtedly one big piece the Braves needed to put back in place. The Braves have also been trying to sort things out on the leadoff front, and with that in mind, they made a roster move on Thursday prior to beginning the series against Minnesota by bringing up veteran outfielder Alex Verdugo. Verdugo spent the last couple of weeks with AAA Gwinnett getting himself ready after signing a minor league deal with the Braves very late in spring training. While the numbers may not have jumped off the page in his time with the Stripers, the kind of energy and the experience that Verdugo brings to the table can be useful at a time in which you're really searching for answers and, as much as anything, might just be searching for a spark. For Alex Verdugo himself, though, this is an opportunity he's very much been looking forward to after a winter spent wondering when exactly somebody was going to give him a call and give him a contract for 2025.
Yeah, it was obviously towards the end, right? They offered a deal, and it was one of those things, man. I didn't really know what I was going to do, so I figured, back myself up a little bit, just kind of bet on myself, and just whatever the opportunity was, just kind of run with it. So I think that's it. I'm happy that the Braves signed me and happy to be here, and I think we got a good squad, so just want to come out here and try to contribute any way I can.
Verdugo found his opportunity with the Atlanta Braves, one that might not have had a straight path to the major leagues were it not for some of the other circumstances going on with Atlanta, not the least of which the absence of Ronald Acuna Jr., something which could change in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and the suspension of Jurickson Profar, which is what opened the door to playing time for other Braves outfielders. All of that, of course, was out of his control, but getting back to the big leagues and finding a way to contribute, that's what Alex Verdugo is going to focus on now that he has arrived in Atlanta.
Yeah, I feel like, the last couple of weeks have been different, right? Something I haven't really gone through in a while, but, still going over there playing baseball, right? Talking to the teammates, it all felt very, very normal once I got there, right? I think just signing late and all that was a little different for me, but as far as playing the game, baseball, it was all very similar, and, guys down there were great. Everybody's been super awesome, so just kind of trying to ramp things up and get it going.
In addition to what Verdugo brings between the lines, there's also the, I think, overall optics and hope that maybe a player can come in with some history and a little bit of fire and spark something for a club. I think it's pretty fair to look at Verdugo as perhaps one of those players for the Braves. And while he may not have the Jock Peterson effect of 2021 or even the Josh Donaldson effect of 2019, there's still something to be said for those fiery, competitive players that come into a clubhouse, especially one that's already been through it a lot in the first 3 weeks, and just provides maybe some energy and a little bit of a buzz, if you will. And that's something I think is fair to look upon just about anybody that walks through that door as someone who can help out in a number of different ways. And that is something I think that Verdugo brings to the table. And he discussed a little bit from his experience in the big leagues thus far.
Yeah, I think for me, I've been through a lot of goods, had some rough moments too. So I think for me, it's just staying even keeled and, handling the day-to-day end of it, right? Your routine, your work ethic, your preparation, just kind of making sure I'm locked in with that and doing the best I can to kind of, feel better the next day, recover, whatever it may be. And, I'm not going to put too much pressure on myself out here. It's more of, get back over here, get my eyes adjusted to some big league pitching. And obviously, we expect to help out and do some good things. But at the same time, it's just, we're gonna let it ramp up, right? We're not going out there with I'm gonna hit 2 homers, right? No, it's more of just let's put some good swings on it, have some quality ABs, and make some plays in the outfield, and just try to do whatever we can that day to help win.
And there are a lot of things that can help a club win. Clearly, your performance on the field is a big part of that. Ultimately, that's what's going to tell the story, but how you get there, what you do every single day, your commitment, as you heard earlier from Spencer Strider, that can play a large part in it. And I think Verdugo has similar thoughts in coming into this Braves situation.
Yeah, I think it's just consistency, man. You got to stay tight in the clubhouse. Everybody's got to stick together. Might have some revolving pieces here and there, but I think it's really just whether it's team dinners, team bonding, just, you got to make sure the boys know that, through the rough stretches, through the good stretches, we're all here, and, some people are battling, some people are clicking, right? So it's just got to keep finding the ways to keep everybody positive and, kind of pushing to the mission. This is something that if we got off the blocks hot and 2 months down the road, we have this little 2-week skit, not really, you're talking about it, but it's not that big of a deal, right? It's just to start off the season, it's a lot of kind of under a microscope. So I feel like just keep playing baseball, man. This is why we play baseball. It's a very long year, and a lot of things go.
That is most definitely the case, and I think we're reminded of that each and every baseball season. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. But of course, I think all the games count the same is something I've heard somewhere as well. One of the other neat stories from the early going of the Braves season is perhaps the unexpected emergence of Nick Allen, a player who was picked up from the Oakland Athletics over the offseason in what felt like maybe just a trade to add someone to the organization that could help out in a bench role. Now, all of a sudden, Allen, who did see big league time with the Oakland Athletics, is getting a chance to play on a regular basis at shortstop for the Atlanta Braves. In fact, it appears he has taken that job, at least for now, away from incumbent Orlando Arcia, who of course had a bad season last year, and we wondered, would there be any sort of a change at shortstop? And we have seen, if you come in and you play hard and you can give the club some competitive at-bats, you just might get your chance. And I think that is, in essence, the Nick Allen story. I had a chance to catch up with the Braves' scrappy middle infielder to get his thoughts on the early going of the season, and here's my conversation with Nick Allen.
This early portion of the season, obviously coming over to a new club and finding this opportunity, what has it been like to kind of, get your feet wet as a member of the Atlanta Braves?
No, it feels amazing. The guys have been super welcoming, and I feel like I'm, free and out there and able to play my game, and I just definitely feel very, very comfortable here.
How would you describe your game? Because obviously, you can look at a player's stats for one thing, see what they've done maybe in the minors or other opportunities in the big leagues. But for you, kind of what's the essence of your game and what you're looking to accomplish between the lines?
I say I'm just a guy that goes out there and plays really solid defense, can have scrappy at-bats, do whatever the team needs me to do, run on second, I'll try to get the guy over, bunt him over, get a knock, and just a guy that just goes out there and competes, I think, and that's what I'm doing so far. So, I can see the recipe for success. Now I just got to keep going.
How much does it mean to just have that opportunity? Because sometimes you come into a new club and it's a little bit harder to find, and sometimes those opportunities are born from circumstances that nobody wants to see, injuries and that kind of stuff. But what has this been like for you to get this playing time and be able to showcase a little bit of what you're capable of?
It's been amazing. I think every time I get an opportunity, I just want to show what I could do and show that I can help a team win. I come in and try to be prepared every day. So I'm thankful for any opportunity I'm getting, whatever SNIT has in store. I'm ready for it, and I'm just trying to be there and present and ready to help the team win. So, like I said, that's just my goal, and I'm trying to do that right now.
Yeah. And I know that's the goal of all 26 men in this clubhouse at any given time. I know that you may be new to this. The Braves, though, a club that obviously comes into each year with certain expectations and things and goals that they set out for. How would you describe this first 3 weeks, and what's kind of the, I guess, overall mindset from your perspective of, A, how things are going, but maybe how to get out of this?
Yeah, I think right now, obviously we haven't been doing what we wanted to do, but it's early, and we just got to keep fighting every day and trying to scratch and claw and get some wins, because each one matters at the end of the day. And I think we're all in the right headspace. I think we just got to keep pushing through, because this game is very hard. It's not always going to go your way, but we just got to keep being ready for every opportunity that we get. And I think everyone's in the right headspace to be right there. So I think we're in a good spot. Obviously we got to put wins together, and that'll happen.
People may forget at times that the most successful hitters in baseball get a hit 3 out of every 10 times, so it can sometimes be a game of failure. But do you find it, from a group perspective, sometimes maybe difficult to get out of the moment of the struggle and put that aside and just focus on the present?
Yeah, 100%. It's hard, but that's why we play this game, because it's so challenging. It's if it was easy, everyone can do it, and it wouldn't be as fun when you do win. So we're just we're grinding. But I think like I said, we're in the right headspace to get things done, and we're ready for whatever opportunity comes at us and to try to find a win. I think we're all going to start putting it together at the same time, and it's going to be really fun.
And this is a story that writes itself over 162 different chapters, if you want to look at it that way. Nick, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Continued luck to you, and look forward to catching up with you soon.
Appreciate it.
Well, that was a chat with Braves infielder Nick Allen, who is making the most of his early season opportunity. We'll see how the rest of the season plays out for him, but he's easy to root for and plays the game hard, and those are things that, when you're going through tough times, are good to see out there on the diamond on a regular basis. That's going to wrap up this week in Braves baseball, though we will talk about the Braves a little bit more as the show goes on, but we are going to turn our attention to what else is happening across the world of Major League Baseball as we take our trip around the big leagues. It comes your way next, right here on From the Diamond with Grant McCauley on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Taking a look around the league with more of our From the Diamond on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Welcome back into From the Diamond, hour number 2, right here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game, live from the Kia studios as we continue on and broaden our horizons and our scope. Take a look at what else is happening around the big leagues. I want to remind you, as always, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to From the Diamond wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find it on the Odyssey app. And make sure you're following along on social media, where we will get to it a little bit later on. There was lots to talk about on social media Saturday night into Sunday, and I assume it will continue to go on, regarding the hustle play or the lack of hustle play or the need for hustle, whatever we want to call it, for Jared Kelenic on Saturday, and how that maybe reverberates through the past and what one very notable Brave thought of that. We'll get into all of that. That in the radio industry is what we call a tease, but I think since you already know what I'm talking about, I might just be spinning my wheels. But we will get into the discussion about Jared Kelenic getting thrown out at second base on Saturday a little bit later in the show. As for now, we are going to take our look around the big leagues, and we're going to find a very familiar individual when we have taken our look around. And at first, it was for something fun. It was for the torpedo bat. You remember those? Remember how everybody was making a big deal about the torpedo bat and how it was going to change the face of baseball because the Yankees hit 9 home runs in one game, and well, they haven't hit 9 home runs in a game since then, which isn't saying much because that's a ton of home runs in one game. But also, I don't think everybody across the league has found necessarily the bat that's going to change the trajectory of their season, though I will say it's a fun story. We'll continue to track it, any and all pun intended, and see what the torpedo bat does and where its place in history is. But one of the crazy things about that, just by the way, for those of you who play fantasy baseball on the Yahoo platform, which I am a staunch supporter of. It's still my favorite. It reminds me of the old days when I got into fantasy baseball, which would have been, 1999, 2000, something like that. I'm in a keeper league. I've been in for 22 years. I have won it, of those 22 years, I believe 6 times. It's a pretty competitive league. It's pretty good. And I like to think that I do a pretty good job of managing a roster over time, but I've had some swings and misses as well on certain players that I thought, well, maybe I can redraft them, and I didn't. Maybe some of them are going to end up in the Hall of Fame named Miguel Cabrera. I don't know. That's probably the worst one I missed on. I had him right after the Marlins won the World Series in 2003, and this is what people tune into the show for. But speaking of Marlins who aren't Marlins anymore, Jazz Chisholm, that's where I'm getting with this. He had a very interesting Thursday. At first, you would think it's just, player gets upset with an umpire, gets thrown out of a game. That happens, enough that we're used to that. And if you know me, if you follow me on social media, I would like to see the umpiring behind home plate become more consistent, maybe a little bit more accountable. And maybe that automated ball strike system that they tried out in spring training will be the answer for that. I don't know. Maybe it won't. Maybe we're just going to have to live with the air quotes human element that some people believe makes the game so fun. I don't know why people think that. But anyway, Jazz Chisholm, he made some headlines because he was suspended for a game and fined on Thursday after getting ejected by home plate umpire John Bacon for arguing a called third strike. Now, why are you getting suspended and fined necessarily just because you got tossed out? I think a fine does come with that. But the suspension was handed down by Major League Baseball because Jazz decided to go to the clubhouse, which is where he's actually supposed to go. But it's what happened after that. He watched the replay, as one does, and decided to get out his phone and, via the powers of social media, fire off a tweet, which I will paraphrase so as to stay on the air and not to endanger the license of this radio station, not even bleeping close. That was Jazz's take on that. He very quickly deleted this because it set off a firestorm of you're not supposed to be on your phone during the game because, as you may know, and for reasons related to sign stealing and other things, certain electronics are not allowed to be used during a game by the players. It's just a blanket rule. Certainly, if you're going to use it in the clubhouse after you've been thrown out, maybe just stay off the social media platforms and wait another, 30 or 40 minutes and complain about it to the press like everybody does. But he deleted this tweet. Major League Baseball does have rules about it. So the social media policy also stipulates that you don't denigrate umpires. I'm glad to hear that because I would have been fined many times for some of the stuff that I have tweeted and some of the games I have watched and some of the calls that I have seen. But as a player, you can't do that. Jazz did apologize. He appealed his suspension, continues to play, but it just goes to show, sometimes we just have to learn those lessons. I don't think that there's anything better, though, than Pablo Sandoval during the game when he was with the Boston Red Sox, which was a forgettable tenure in his career. And I think that he was just on Instagram just liking posts. And people noticed, and they're like, why is Pablo Sandoval liking all these posts right now? I think he might have been injured, but either way, he was just sitting around while the Red Sox were playing, and he's supposed to be at least a semi-active participant of it on the bench, just hanging out and liking posts on Instagram. Maybe that's not a thing to do during games either, but either way, we're going to set down social media for a little while, but I promise we'll get back to it. But let's talk about something big that was happening on the field, and that is the swing of Tyler Soderstrom. That's the first baseman for the not-so-Oakland Athletics. Of course, they're playing their games in Sacramento, which is a whole thing that we've covered quite a bit. He's your major league home run leader. I didn't think I'd be saying that 3 weeks into the year. In fact, I'll be honest with you. I didn't know much about Tyler Soderstrom other than he plays for the A's, probably by playing Yahoo Fantasy and thinking, all right, if I sort all of the corner infielders, is this guy any good? And the answer last year was no. He wasn't particularly good, but he clocked his 9th home run of the season. So not Aaron Judge, not Shohei Ohtani, not pick a slugger, but Tyler Soderstrom is the major league home run leader. He's 23 years old. In his third year with the Athletics, last year in 61 games, he had 9 home runs. This year, he's already got 9, and I believe 21 or 22 games, depending on what number Sunday was for him. But he's already got those 9 homers and is on pace for nearly 70 this season. If Tyler Soderstrom hits 70 home runs this year, that is certainly going to get a lot of publicity, but I'm not sure that this pace is going to stay. But it is fun early in the season, at least it is for me, to see what kind of crazy paces people can get on, because occasionally you'll put out a pace that they're on and they actually will meet it. Aaron Judge hitting, 62 home runs a couple of years ago. Shohei Ohtani getting to 50-50. Ronald Acuna Jr. with the 40-70 thing. Some of these stats are kind of fun to track and see where they end up. But Soderstrom for 68, 70 home runs, not sure I'm going to buy in on that one. Speaking of swings that haven't been connecting, let's talk about the Colorado Rockies for a while. This is a club that I think is kind of, I don't even know the nicest way to describe it. The doldrums have been going on for a while there. This is not a competitive club. This is an ownership group that has inarguably made baffling decisions with both the hierarchy of how they are drafting and developing players, with what they are prioritizing in player acquisitions, which, by the way, they're not doing too much of that. And when they do, oh boy, they have made some decisions in recent years. But the Rockies, who play in Coors Field, fired Hensley Mullins, their hitting coach, on the 17th of April. The easy answer for why you fire your hitting coach in the middle of April is you're really bad. But I saw a graphic, a StatCast graphic this week on Friday morning that really caught my attention. And let's just put aside for a minute ownership and the poor roster management and the reason why these hitters are on the Rockies and at the major league level, because some of them, quite honestly, are having some bad starts. Others of them, the Rockies could probably find better men to play those positions. But of the top 20 hitters in Major League Baseball when it comes to whiff rate, with at least 50 swings, so this is a judge of how much you swing and miss. Of the top 20 hitters in all of Major League Baseball, the Rockies have 7 of them. 7, including 4 of the top 5. So these dudes, not even close. Not even close to what they need to be. They got Jacob Stallings, who's a journeyman catcher. He is the number 1 offender for whiff rate in Major League Baseball. You find Michael Toglia at number 3, Zach Veen at number 4, Jordan Beck at number 5. Then you got Mickey Moniak, who I believe was released in spring training maybe by the Angels and got picked up by Colorado. He's a former number 1 overall pick. That's a swing and a miss there as well. He's number 12. Chris Bryant. My goodness, I'll get into this in a moment, but he's number 16, and then you got Ryan McMahon at number 17. Not to mention that they dumped Nolan Jones, who has a strikeout rate of about 37% and would be somewhere on this list if he played enough to qualify. That is a bafflingly bad collection of hitters when it comes to swinging and missing. And if you've been frustrated by the Braves strikeouts around here, well, let me introduce you to the Colorado Rockies. You're going to see them in about a week. I don't know that it's going to have all turned around by then, but you are going to be in Coors Field, which, by the way, the hitting coach in Coors Field, if your job's not safe, I don't even know where to begin with how bad things must be for that club. Because you don't have to have big names to put up some good numbers in Coors Field. It's a very friendly place. It used to be friendlier before you had the humidor, but yeah, whatever's going on out there is regrettable. And how bad is it for Chris Bryant? His career, theoretically, arguably, he's been injured quite a bit over the life of his contract with the Rockies, which, speaking of baffling decisions, you trade Nolan Arenado after talking him into signing a huge deal to be the cornerstone of your franchise and saying, we're going to build here. And then you don't bring in any help. You get in a disagreement with your franchise player, who then has to waive his very considerable no-trade clause, which was again on display when the Cardinals couldn't deal him over the course of the winter, and he blocked a trade to, I believe, at least the Houston Astros, if not maybe another team or two. But putting all that aside, you had Nolan Arenado, somebody you knew, somebody that you drafted, you developed, you grew, who was a Platinum Glove, award-winning third baseman who could slug in that ballpark. You had him there. You traded him after giving him a whole bunch of money. Then you took that money that you saved and signed Chris Bryant, who has proceeded to become one of the worst free agent contracts, not just in that franchise's history, which is certainly saying something because they've had a couple of them, but maybe all of baseball. Maybe not the worst, but it's certainly a contender. So Chris Bryant has a back issue. I believe that spinal stenosis issue that ended David Wright's career. He's got pain so bad he can't get out of bed some mornings, but he's not ready to say, hey, my career could be or is over. So not quite ready to retire, but certainly not sounding like he's going to be a big factor for the Rockies again in 2025. We'll find out. We'll see how all of this goes. But have we seen the last of Chris Bryant on a baseball in a baseball uniform on a baseball diamond in general is another question that the Colorado Rockies are having to ask themselves and perhaps others. But let's go back to the start of 2020. So we've got ourselves a nice 5-year sample size plus the first 21-22 games of 2025. The Rockies are 291 and 433. 435. 144 games under 500. That's how bad this club has been. And you can't say enough how much management has been involved in that. There's just no two ways about it. They have really fumbled what I think. You've seen the Rockies when they're good. That first couple of years in the league even, they weren't that good. But baseball was hot in Denver, and they were selling out at Mile High Stadium and then at Coors Field. They can pack 3 million fans in if they have a good team. That's hard to get the pitching, but if they get the hitting part right and get just a good enough pitching staff, it's a club that I think can play a pretty interesting brand of baseball. It's definitely different than most of the other brands that you see. But it's like ownership decided about 5 or 6 years ago, you know what? We're just not really going to get into this anymore. We're just not doing it. We'll make the most minimum effort ever. And I think unless or until they do something about that, and they being Major League Baseball, which, let's not hold our breath, I don't think the Rockies are going to be getting out of this anytime soon. So that's a little preview of what we might be talking about this time next week, which I guess I should underscore by saying if the Braves can't go into Coors Field and beat up on the Colorado Rockies right now, they're going to have a whole nother set of questions to answer for themselves. Meanwhile, still in the National League West, one other little story to get to you before we get out of here. The Dodgers could get Clayton Kershaw back. He made a rehab start on Wednesday, 3 scoreless innings for him. The Dodgers, who have a 9-man starting staff, once all healthy, and once they get them all back, are going to find innings for one of the greatest pitchers in their franchise's history, and a guy that I kind of wondered, there were 2 schools of thought. Was he going to retire, or was he going to come back and pitch another year? Because I don't think there was any question that Kershaw, if he did come back, was going to go back to the Dodgers and be a part of that. The only club he has ever known and the club for which he has put together a Hall of Fame career. But how much is left here in his late 30s? But prime Kershaw, one of the greatest pitchers we've ever seen in any generation. And speaking of greats of any generation, Shohei Ohtani is still doing bullpens, but Dave Roberts did indicate that he still could be a couple of months away from pitching in major league games for the Braves. But they are for the Dodgers. If he pitched for the Braves, that'd be a whole different show here. We're probably not going to be doing that. But putting that Freudian slip aside, second half is when the Dodgers are expecting to have Shohei Ohtani factor in their pitching plan. So that'll be fascinating to see. It's been a couple of years. He had the same procedure that Spencer Strider did, the UCL brace. He's already had Tommy John. Reports from the bullpen seem to be pretty good, so we'll see what Ohtani looks like on the mound and what kind of impact he could make there, most certainly. But that is our trip around the big leagues for this week. When we come back, we would usually have a guest from somewhere else across baseball, but we're going to go down on the farm and get a little bit of insight on the Braves' newest minor league affiliate. They're the Columbus Clingstones. We're going to talk to Jack Johnson. He is their radio voice. He joins me next on From the Diamond with Grant McCauley on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Now, back to more From the Diamond. Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Welcome back into From the Diamond with Grant McCauley on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game as we continue on this Easter Sunday, wrapping up a weekend for the Atlanta Braves and usually taking our trip around the big leagues, but I want to do something a little bit different this week and take a trip down on the farm, and that's exactly where we're going to go because the Braves have a brand new Double-A affiliate. Mississippi Braves, no more. Columbus Clingstones playing their inaugural season not too far up here in the North Georgia area, and I'm always a big proponent of jumping in the car and checking out what's going on in the minor leagues, and the Braves have just made it that much easier to see what's happening in Double-A, where there have been some interesting things, to say the least. And to help me talk about those, I want to welcome in Jack Johnson. He is the radio voice of the Columbus Clingstones, and I'm excited to talk to him about what has been, I'm sure, a very busy couple of weeks in his life. Well, Jack, first and foremost, appreciate you making some time for me. Happy Easter to you, and I'm excited to talk about a new chapter in Braves minor league baseball, one that you've gotten to see firsthand thus far this year, the Columbus Clingstones. So, I guess, how goes it? And, of course, welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Grant. It's great to be on. Yeah, we're approaching the end of a 6-game series, first ever homestand here in Columbus, Georgia. It's been an incredible week from a lot of different perspectives. Obviously, the hard work that has gone into completely revitalizing Golden Park, which is a ballpark with 100 years of history. A $50 million renovation has really injected new life into this ballpark. It has made it one of the state-of-the-art minor league facilities. And so to see the people that put so much time and effort into the construction process, the staff, which has really done a tremendous job decorating the place down the first and the third base lines, getting the office set up, seeing kind of a dream become a reality in the city of Columbus and the Chattahoochee Valley has been terrific, especially this week. We started on the road, getting to know the players, getting to know the coaching staff. This is a team full of terrific people and very good baseball players. We've seen a lot of great pitching in this series. Not a ton of scoring, but that's to be expected when the Braves and the Marlins affiliates face off. Those are two organizations that put a premium on pitching, and that's kind of been the story this week.
Yeah, and I do want to get into the players, the prospects, all of that good stuff, but I kind of wanted to really drill down on Columbus and the history there, and of course the location for the Braves, which had to be something that they were very much excited about. When you look at the map of where Atlanta affiliates are, you of course know all about Gwinnett from your time there. You had Rome, you got Augusta, now you got Columbus. I don't know that any other club in Major League Baseball is set up as well in terms of proximity to have all of their minor league teams pretty much within a drivable distance. So if it comes to rehab, if it comes to just taking a look at their prospects, the Braves can stay really dialed in a number of different ways, and Columbus is just the latest of those ways.
Yeah, no question about it. And if you look at the map, kind of like you said, and you were to take a pencil and draw lines to each of the affiliates, they would resemble roots, which is kind of the basis of what a farm system is, right? They're the roots of your organization, and that's what leads into hopefully, and in the Braves' case, usually a very successful major league team with a lot of homegrown talent. You can go in any direction now. You can go north to Rome, southwest to Columbus, east out to Augusta, Georgia, and obviously you can go a little northeast to Gwinnett as well. And so having all those teams within proximity, it certainly is very exciting here in Columbus. This is a ballpark, like you mentioned, with so much history. It was originally opened in 1926. It's been the spring training home of the St. Louis Cardinals and the New York Yankees 8 decades ago. It has seen legends come through here. Shoeless Joe Jackson, Babe Ruth, Jackie Robinson, Hank Aaron have all played here. Frank Thomas is from Columbus, played high school here, played at this ballpark. Craig Kimbrell, another legend, has played for the Clingstones this week. And I talked to Craig yesterday. This is actually his second time appearing in this ballpark. He was here at Golden Park back in 2008 when he was just entering the Braves farm system. So it was really cool to talk to him and just ask about the improvements to the ballpark. And he's really excited about what this ballpark can do to revitalize the town. He's from Huntsville. He's seen it firsthand with what Rocket City has done with that new ballpark and the development that's gone on around there. And I know that's part of the plans here in Columbus. I talked to Jason Michael Ford, who's with Populous. They've designed or helped to renovate 28 of the 30 major league parks. So we got a world-class architecture firm here in Columbus, Georgia, within the state's borders, working on a AA baseball park. I think that kind of illustrates how seriously this project has been taken. And how much pride the city should take in it.
Chatting with Jack Johnson. He is the voice of the Columbus Clingstones, the Braves AA affiliate, enjoying its first season in its new ballpark, in its new home in general. He joins me on the WadeFord.com hotline here on From the Diamond with Grant McCauley on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. You brought up a lot of really interesting points that go into getting everything ready, the revitalization that had to go on for the ballpark, and of course the surrounding area to come. But let's jump into the baseball side of it here, and let's get to know the team just a little bit. I mean, it's obviously early, but not a lot of big position player prospects, but nonetheless, AA has been kind of a fascinating place, whether it's for position players or pitchers alike, as a springboard into the major leagues. Sometimes they skip that trip to AAA altogether. But before we get ahead of ourselves there, kind of size up what you've seen in the early going and I guess the makeup overall of the roster on the offensive side, and then we'll switch to pitching in a couple minutes.
Yeah, of course. So the offense through the first 10 games led not just the Southern League, but all the AA in at-bats with runners in scoring positions. So although if you look at the top 30 prospects list, you may not see many members of the Clingstones roster on there, I think it's a two-part explanation for that. One, the pitching depth within the Braves organization is spectacular. And so maybe prospects that would be prospects in the top 30 for other organizations are moved to maybe the 32nd or 33rd slot playing here in AA. They are still fine baseball players. It's a team with a lot of speed. When they get on base, they will put pressure on opposing pitchers. Kevin Kilpatrick Jr. had a 4-steal game. That's the most in the Southern League in one game last week in Biloxi. Cal Conley, who's been in AA for 3 years now, he's kind of the spark plug at the top of the order. He plays a tremendous shortstop. And there's a lot of different players that you can mix and match throughout the lineup. David McCabe, who is a prospect, he's in the top 30 rankings. Third baseman who had Tommy John surgery last year, was working his way back, spent some time in the Fall League. He's off to a flaming start in 2025, leads the Southern League in several categories. He's top 10 in, I believe, about 10 categories. He certainly was yesterday, had the day off, so I'll have to double check where he is on this Easter Sunday. And so, although Pensacola, I will give them a ton of credit, the Miami Marlins AA affiliate has pitched spectacularly this week. I would say through the first 14 games, and it's a long season, Grant, but through the first 14 games, there have been a lot of encouraging signs with the offense, and you certainly don't need much offense with this team with the starting pitching they've got.
Yeah, and that certainly all adds up to what can be a winning formula for a team. No two ways about it. You mentioned 14 games gets you about 10% of the way through the season, so a lot of baseball left to be played. And on that pitching side, there are some arms I think that could stand out this season. And here in the early going, some high-round picks, some interesting names to say the least as far as Braves pitching prospects are concerned. I want to start with Blake Burkhalter, who's on his road back from Tommy John surgery. He's gotten a little bit of work under his belt the last year or two, but he seems to be off to a good start. And feel free to share some of the other names that have stood out to you here over the first couple of weeks as well.
For people that don't know the story of Blake Burkhalter, he grew up in Dothan, Alabama. He went to Auburn. And so people in the Chattahoochee Valley and here in Columbus that extends out to Auburn, and they have seen Blake kind of grow up. He's played for Tim Hudson, who is here to throw out the first pitch on Tuesday night. And he's always been a mentor to Blake, but he was a huge advocate for his career when he made the jump to go into professional baseball and advocated for Atlanta to take a look at him. And I think Atlanta is going to be very happy with the selection they've made. He's a former closer at Auburn. He was dominant. And fans of college baseball may remember him when Auburn made a run to Omaha a few years ago. Like you said, he's working his way back from Tommy John surgery, but his stuff is great. He looks like a closer at all times. He will attack hitters. He'll get ahead, but he still has the stamina to get deep into ball games. And, so far, so good. You talk about AA being a springboard. We all know about Michael Harris II, Spencer Schwellenbach. I know that the messaging from Paul Davis, who is the Braves director of pitching development, has been who's going to be the next guy up, right? Who's going to be the next guy to make that jump from AA? Could it be a position player? Could it be a pitcher? I think when you look at the AA roster here in Columbus, I would probably lean toward the pitching staff right now. But there's a terrific level of starting pitching, and there's a terrific level of depth of the starting pitching here in Columbus. And it just seems like every game starter is giving this offense and really the team here in Columbus a shot to win.
Yeah, and that's really what you want is the development, obviously, but winning on your way up. That's a big part of the development as well as you are on the road to the big leagues where obviously you want to do the most winning that you possibly can, and pitching is a huge part of that. It's kind of the backbone of the Braves farm system as we've seen over the years. Now, you've got some big leaguers down there with the Clingstones, and one of which I have to ask about. You brought him up a little bit earlier, and that's Craig Kimbrell. We could see him in Atlanta again in a few weeks. That'll be an exciting story when and if that happens, and it sounds like more of the when than the if, but he's made a handful of appearances so far. Numbers, I think, about what you'd expect and hope for, but what have you seen from Kimbrell thus far? Velocity, comfortability, all those things as he is kind of coming into it cold with no spring training and just trying to get himself up to speed.
Yeah, no spring training, getting himself up to speed. So this is kind of, in effect, his spring training. I think it was a moment that no one will ever forget on Tuesday night, opening night here at the ballpark. There was already so much anticipation. Fans in Columbus had waited 17 years, Grant, for affiliated baseball to return to 104th Street and Golden Park, now Synovus Park. I don't know if they were expecting to see Craig Kimbrell enter the ballgame in the eighth innings. And so when he jogged in from left center field where the Clingstones bullpen is, he got on the mound and he struck that signature pose as he leaned in with his right arm hanging to the side. There was a roar about the crowd that you would expect for a home run. So much excitement and anticipation. He finished off that start, striking out the last two he faced. His numbers were in the mid-90s with the fastball velo, and I think they've gotten better since then because he entered again on Thursday night, faced four batters, struck them all out, and it wasn't just the fastball that was playing, it was also the curveball, which has been so reliable for him over the course of his year. He looked like prime Craig Kimbrell, and granted, I know it's the AA level, but these are future major league hitters on the Marlins side because they've got a terrific AA team this year. And so to carve them up was certainly encouraging. Last night, a 1-2-3 inning of relief as well. He's a terrific Brave. He's compiled just such a venerated career. And I've gotten a chance to meet him. He's a terrific guy as well. I know that's no surprise to Braves fans that have either grown up or watched along with his career over the years. I don't know kind of how that translates from the AA level when he moves up to Gwinnett and then eventually Atlanta, which seems to be the plan. But I would imagine all the signs have been super encouraging so far. And really, I just think more for the people and the residents of this town to see Craig Kimbrell here back in the Braves organization in their own backyard, to get a chance to come out this week and watch him. Was very special. He hadn't appeared in the Braves organization since September 28th, 2014 at Citizens Bank Park in Philadelphia. So it's been over a decade, and it kind of felt like a homecoming a little bit and was a special moment to witness.
No doubt about it. And when you talk about promotions to get people excited about minor league baseball, bringing in somebody with that kind of name, that certainly can check a lot of boxes for that. But opening week, nonetheless, a lot of pomp, a lot of circumstance, and sounds like some pretty good baseball going on down there as well. Jack, let everybody know how they can connect with you and how they can catch the Clingstones, both in person and, of course, on the radio, where you are doing a fine job of being the inaugural voice of the Columbus Clingstones.
Well, thank you. For me, at least, you can always just reach out on Twitter. I'm at Jack Johnson. And we are on Sports Visions 92.1 FM. They're a terrific station with PMB broadcasting here in Columbus that have allowed us to get on the radio dial in minor league baseball, which I think is super cool. That's not always the case around minor league baseball, but we're broadcasting all 138 games. We're also on Bally Live, which is a free streaming service to watch all minor league baseball games. You can hear me when we're here at home for all 69 of our home games at Columbus Park as well. We've got tons of exciting promotions, and like you said, moving this team from Mississippi now inside the Georgia state borders has opened the door for opportunities to see players like Craig Kimbrell working their way back to Atlanta, or potentially rehab assignments. And there may be some very exciting ones coming up here in the future.
Yeah, we'll certainly see how that all plays out. And, of course, the Stars of tomorrow, they play here today. I think I've heard that slogan a time or three in my time in the minor leagues. Jack, I appreciate all your time. I look forward to catching up with you as the season wears on and seeing what it is like in the inaugural season for the Columbus Clingstones. I appreciate you joining the show.
Thanks, Grant. You're the man.
Again, he is Jack Johnson of the Columbus Clingstones. Really, really appreciate his time, and make sure you check out the Braves' new AA affiliate. Could be pretty fun and sounds like a beautiful ballpark experience to boot, so be sure to make your plans and make that trip out there to support minor league baseball, which is, I think, is one of the most fun forms of entertainment that's out there, but I might be a little bit biased as a baseball lifer. Putting that aside, we are going to turn our attention back to the Atlanta Braves, talk about the week to come, the St. Louis Cardinals rolling into Truist Park, and much more that comes your way right here on From the Diamond with Grant McCauley on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Here we go now.
I love baseball. Now back to more Grant McCauley and From the Diamond on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
This is From the Diamond. I am Grant McCauley. Right here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game, live from the Kia Studios, wrapping up another edition of the show. Make sure you subscribe to From the Diamond wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find it on the Odyssey app. You can follow me on social media at Grant McCauley. You can follow the show at From the Diamond with an underscore on the end. That's for the X platform. And you can do both of those things on Instagram if you like. Just don't like them during the game. At Grant McCauley and at From the Diamond. You can find them right there. And that's a little callback for what we were talking about earlier. But we'll get to social media in just a little while. I want to talk about a few more things that are going on for the Braves before we get into what I'm going to call a more nuanced discussion, and I'll give you my thoughts on it if you care for them. I think adjusting for inflation, that plus $1.50 will get you a cup of coffee at Waffle House. So we'll put all that aside. We'll get to it in just a moment. But the Braves made the most of their homecoming with this sweep of the Twins, and now they're going to set their sights on a series win over the St. Louis Cardinals. That begins on Monday. Braves are going to be sending Spencer Schwellenbach, Spencer Strider, and Bryce Elder to the mound. Those are your probable pitchers as announced by the club. Obviously, for Strider, who you heard from earlier in the show, the object is to just keep stacking good starts. 5 innings, 2 runs, 5 strikeouts, first time out. Fastball velocity was up around 97 early on, kind of settled into that 94, 95 range. I had a lot of people ask me, am I concerned about that? Not particularly. I think it was kind of the same way in maybe the first of his 3 Gwinnett starts. I think that there's a little bit of, to use the racing term, he's throttling the velocity just a little bit. I don't think that throwing hard, obviously, is the number one object here, but we know what Spencer Strider is and what makes him successful. And he said it before, fastball with command, then the slider. But he's also working on that curveball that he debuted last spring, at least in terms of really using it as a viable pitch. I don't know if third pitch, fourth pitch. And he's also thrown some changeups. And I think that that will be another weapon that he can utilize because as he goes along, it was going to be fun to watch and will be fun to watch the kinds of performances that he had in his first couple of years in the big leagues. No question. It's a very special brand of pitcher. But like everyone, he's going to have to evolve, find what makes him most comfortable, and obviously find out what works. And that doesn't mean having to throw 99 or 100 miles an hour every single time. There are a lot of pitchers in baseball that have very good careers without throwing 100 miles an hour. So I'm not telling you Spencer Strider needs to. Could it be fun? Yes. The answer to that is yes. We've seen that. We've confirmed that. But I do think, all jokes aside, that what Spencer Strider does over time is going to be what builds him back into being the pitcher that I think he expects to be, and obviously the pitcher that the Braves and their fans are accustomed to seeing, and I think he's on the road to that. Could use another good start against the St. Louis Cardinals, next time out. Now, the last time out for Spencer Schwellenbach was also forgettable. He got lit up in Toronto by the Blue Jays, and not necessarily by what I would call the usual suspects either. But for Schwellenbach, there's going to be a clunker every now and again. His job is, now, 5 days later, take the ball, go out there, forget about that one, and just pick right up where you left off. I mean, he has been one of the most impressive storylines for the Braves easily a year ago. There were not a lot of silver linings, but Spencer Schwellenbach was the silverest of silver linings. Is silverest a word? We don't know. We'll let you know next week. But he was an extremely, extremely good story for the Braves that has carried right on over to 25, and I think has some really, really special stuff that could make him easily one of the top 5 pitchers in the National League beginning this year. That's how good I think he is. I think he could get some Cy Young votes this year. In fact, I think he will. But we'll see how all that plays out because that would file under right now the way too early part of the season for that. Now, the question becomes Bryce Elder. What exactly has been going on with this? We know that the Braves rotation took a hit when Reynaldo Lopez went down and will be down until at least the second half if he does, in fact, pitch again this year. But I think a lot of people expected this to be handled much differently. You had A.J. Smith-Shawver and Bryce Elder up, both of whom with options. But instead of optioning out Elder, who I think at this point is safe to say you kind of know what you're going to get there. And sometimes that's a good thing. But in this particular parlance, I don't necessarily think that's the case. I mean, we've seen Bryce Elder at his absolute best, but it's been quite a while since he's been able to do anything like that consistently. I believe over his last 25, if not more starts, it's an ERA north of 6. That is not coming in, and I feel like giving the team a chance to win, if that's your aggregate score there. And you look at the start against Minnesota on Friday night, 5 innings. Okay, yeah, you want 5 innings out of your 5th starter. That's great. But if that's the bar, you got to set the bar higher, not just in innings. 5 innings and 4 earned runs is not doing what you were asked to do, doing what you were expected to do. If you're expected to come out and post a 7.20 ERA, you are, in fact, not the answer. And I think that the question should be, who can we bring in here that gives us not just more of a competitive advantage, a chance to win in a game, but maybe you're able to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, which is, the kind of thing that I think at least in the old days we were open to, which is maybe you find somebody with a lot of upside and see if they could factor in. And that is where A.J. Smith-Shawver comes in. And I'm not going to begin to sit here and tell you that he is a finished product and that he won't be capable of a clunker or 2 as well. I think that he will. I think that there will be growing pains for him. I think that we've seen some of those, but we're also talking about a pitcher that made it to the big leagues at 20 years old, a minimum of 2 years ahead of schedule, but the stuff is tantalizing. The arm talent is there, and I think that he has taken some steps in development, and I just don't know that it does him a whole lot of good to yo-yo him back and forth between AAA Gwinnett and the big leagues. I think there's something to say to establishing a rhythm and a consistency of just knowing where you're going to make your next start for the 21, 22-year-old pitchers. And this is something that, I think we've all noticed or all taken note of in the Braves' development of players. And I know some of it was, hey, we need fresh arms. We got to option guys. Major League Baseball has kind of cracked down on that with options now requiring you to stay down for 10 days. But still, some of the pitchers, I feel like it took them longer to figure things out, if they ever did, because they were just kind of bouncing back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And you got to pitch well and maybe earn your next opportunity. There's something to be said for that. If you pitch poorly and get optioned, it's not a surprise. It's more of a surprise to me when you pitch well and you get optioned if you're not necessarily looking for that quote-unquote next day's, backup, those innings that you definitely need. I kind of thought Bryce Elder might just be the innings solution if you got into a game where, hey, somebody's got to cover 2 or 3 frames here because the starter didn't get far enough. Maybe come in, have a reliever take care of it, and then hand Bryce Elder a couple of 3 innings and say, see what you can do here. Maybe that's a role that he's able to do. But that second, third time through the order, again, it's stuff we've talked about a lot. Bryce played a big role in 2023. He did fade down the stretch. Last year, certainly challenging for him. But this year, I did not have Bryce Elder making 3 starts in April on my bingo card. And having A.J. Smith-Shawver, after a pretty good start against Tampa Bay, one in which I feel like he kind of started to find his edge as he went on, optioned back down to AAA. Now, neither one of these choices are perfect. I will grant you that. But I just feel like there's a lot more upside with A.J. Smith-Shawver, and I feel like the Braves owe it to themselves to kind of discover that. If you're confident enough about him to put him on the opening day roster, give him playoff starts, those kinds of things, why are we quibbling about where he's starting his games in April? Let's let the kid set up shop and see what he can do. And if he fails, he fails. If he succeeds, he succeeds. If it's a split in the difference sometimes, then that's okay too. As long as you feel like you've got the guy out there that's giving you the best chance to win. And I think it's just fair to question that, to make a long story short. Meanwhile, I think we've all been kind of wondering about Chris Sale. There's been a little bit of velocity questions here and there, which are not a big worry for me. I think he just needs to make some minor adjustments, get himself back into that rhythm. I don't think he has found that yet this year. 98 pitches in 4 1/3 innings. He punched out 8, only gave up 2 runs against Minnesota on Saturday. Looked a little bit like Chris Sale, but not as comfortable, I think, this year thus far. And he's said he's been very critical of his performances in ways that I cannot relay here on the air. He's a pretty honest guy. But I feel like Chris Sale is healthy and is going to figure that whole thing out. And I think we saw last year what his upside can be. So I don't really put him into a place where I'm going to worry a whole bunch. And we've also talked about the Braves bullpen quite a bit as we talk about bullpens, I think, on a regular basis because, they are oftentimes a lightning rod for a club's success or failures, or the latter. But the Braves bullpen may not have all its pieces yet, and they may be getting a boost from Craig Kimbrell at some point over the next couple of weeks. We'll see as he tossed another scoreless inning for Columbus, as we heard a lot about AA Columbus from Jack Johnson, who joined me in the last segment. But Craig Kimbrell could be back. That could factor into things. Rafael Montero has been pretty good, who they picked up off the scrap heap from the Houston Astros. But 12 innings, 2 runs overall in the series against Minnesota. You want to hand out an award for a group that helped you out in winning those 3 games? The Braves bullpen certainly did it. And a couple of scoreless innings from Pierce Johnson on Sunday were certainly nice to see. He needed those. And now we're going to get to the point of the show that I put off until the final 4 minutes because I wanted to lock it down into a certain amount of time and give it only the amount of discussion that I think is necessary in a 2-hour show. And that is what went on Saturday when Jared Kelenic hit what should have been an extra base hit off of the right field wall, hit off the bricks, and he got thrown out trying to get to second base. And why did he get thrown out? Because he didn't run out of the box. Now, we've seen this before. It's not too often. It's about every 2 or 3, maybe 4 years, we see somebody that thinks, oh, I have really hit a home run, and I'm going to enjoy it for a moment. But then you realize you're enjoying it before you know for sure that it's gone. Because you can hit the ball well, and if it just doesn't get up quite high enough, everybody kind of has to wear it because of that. And I think that's where the accountability comes in for these kinds of plays. But Kelenic, for whatever reason, and to the surprise of many, including myself, was not pulled from the game on Saturday, which I think would have been warranted. I don't think he needs to be benched for a week. But hey, if you think that you've hit a homer and you haven't and you don't run, yeah, there's an accountability factor that I think should be in place. Player to player, player to coach, player to fans. There's just an expectation you're going to go out there and do your level best to give an effort. And effort was in question on that play. Now, I will also say, having watched Jared Kelenic play a lot, this is a guy who hustles and plays hard all the time. And I will give him credit for taking some accountability for it after the game and prior to Sunday. But he was right back in the lineup, and he wasn't pulled from the game. Unlike Ronald Acuna Jr. in 2019 in August against the LA Dodgers. He thought he'd hit a home run, went off the wall, stayed at first base, got pulled from the game. Marcell Ozuna, a couple of years ago, got pulled from a game for hitting a ball, thinking it was gone, and finding out, I'm only going to be on first base. It's a bad look. It's a thing that shouldn't happen. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what level of player you are. It certainly doesn't matter what other demographic of player you are. It is accountability one player to another. The way that it was handled, though, I think there's a whole lot of questions that should have been asked, and I think that were asked on Sunday. Someone should have pointed it out. If Brian Snitker didn't see it, which is what he said after Sunday's game, Somebody should have pointed it out and said, hey, we got to do something here. I think that's what happened in 2019 to Ronald Acuna Jr., and I think that still bothered Ronald enough that he felt the need, having seen all this and having gotten on social media where all the best things in the world live, and decided, hey, if that was me, I would have been pulled from the game. And he felt so strongly about it that he posted it, but then he deleted it for reasons I'm sure are fairly obvious because it started a controversy. Brian Snitker was also asked about that. He downplayed it, said, I hadn't seen it. It was down. I haven't talked to Ronald about it. Now, I don't think there's any ulterior motive here in terms of, hey, there's a double standard. Everybody's being treated differently. But I will tell you, the Kelenic situation was not handled properly. I have no problem with him pulling Marcell Ozuna 2 years ago, Ronald Acuna Jr. 5-6 years ago, whatever it was now, almost, and anybody else that's been pulled from a game or will be pulled from a game for not doing that. It's the minimum amount of effort to just run out of the box and to find out. But I think that we have blown this thing up and taken it into directions which part of it is going to be some frustrations, I think, from the way that the season started. But secondarily, a lot of things that may not necessarily be in play. I don't think there's any malicious intent by Brian Snitker for how he handled 2019 or how he handled this one. But did he handle both of them the same way? He absolutely didn't. I think some conversations have been had. I think more conversations will now have to be had about it, and I think that they'll sort it out. But this is the kind of stuff that should be settled inside the clubhouse and should involve the accountability of one player to another, player to coach, and, of course, players and team to fans, because you owe it to the people that pay their money to sit and watch there to give you the best effort. So those are my thoughts on all of this. I'm sure I left out a lot. I'm sure I could have played you a lot of audio. I'm sure I could have presented a whole lot more about this, but I really feel like that's all the time that really needed, and hopefully we'll be hearing the last of it pretty soon. So that will wrap up this edition of From the Diamond. I want to thank Jack Johnson again of the Columbus Clingstones for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in to From the Diamond. Make sure you follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can search for From the Diamond, find it on the Odyssey app, and find me here on 92.9 The Game each and every Sunday at 5 o'clock throughout baseball season. Thanks to my producer, Dom, and I will look forward to catching all of you next week. This has been From the Diamond on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. I'm Grant McCauley, and until next time, so long, everyone.